I'm gonna reroute the thermo drive.
Electronic mail failure.
Stored forever in a virtual library.
Computers can't swim.
They can now.
The data turbines, the website, it's alive.
Movies
And mainframes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Movies and Mainframes, the podcast that is going to explore and discuss the representation of technology in media. I'm your host, Andy, and today with me, I have a very special guest. I have with me Garrett Gross. How you doing today, Garrett?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you for taking the time. Just so the listeners know, me and Garrett used to work together many years ago, and we made video magic together. I constantly bugged him to be in our videos, and he was so gracious to be funny for us.
It's not how I remember it at all. It was very, very easy to get me to do those videos.
What, you didn't want to do normal work?
Yeah. Garrett, we need you for an afternoon to go sweat it out in Zilker Park. Yeah, it's good.
Man, so it's good to see you. I haven't talked to you in quite a long time. I asked you to do this podcast, and of course you said yes, and here you are. So I'm very excited to talk to you about today's movie that we watched. But first, Garrett, for our listeners, would you mind give us a little background on yourself as far as, you know, where you started in your career and where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. So, I've always been in tech ever since I could legally work, and, probably before that, but, statute of limitations and all. I think I've done everything in tech, network engineering, systems administration. I've been a hacker, ethical, of course.
Of course.
Right, my whole life, and managed to kind of parlay that into a couple different roles in software companies, including, like you mentioned, working at SolarWinds. I was in support as a sales engineer there, and right now I work at a small startup where I build security products.
Nice. Well, there you go. So see, listeners, I have people on the podcast who know what they are talking about. Because,
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, it is canon on this podcast. I do not know much about tech except just random things. I know how to Google things. So that's about the extent of my knowledge. So it's always nice to have somebody who has a background in the business.
I'd say you're like the ultimate user, though, I would say.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, yeah, for sure.
I'm probably one of those users that IT hates. That, I've tried to fix it myself and everything, and like, why did you do that? Just open up
we have to reset Garabay's password again.
Exactly. Well, Garrett, it's been a long time. I would love to sit here and catch up with you, but unfortunately, we don't have time for that bullshit. We got more important things to talk about. We need to talk about today's movie. Today, we watched a good one. We watched 1995's Johnny Mnemonic, directed by Robert Longo and starring, of course, Keanu Reeves, Dina Meyer, Ice-T, Takashi Kitano, Dolph Lundgren, Henry Rollins.
Yeah.
And then Udo Kier, one of my favorites.
I remember from Ace Ventura. Ron Kramer, I think, was his character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Udo Kier for me is... God, he's just so good. Every time he's in a movie, you know exactly what he's going to be. I'm not super familiar with his European career, but in the late 80s and 90s in American movies, if you needed a handsome, piercing eye, sophisticated-looking gentleman who's a bit of a creep, you get Udo
up to
Kier.
no good.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, it was funny. So, when you asked me to do this, I looked at all the titles, and like all the good ones, I kind of thought had been taken, like Hackers, Sneakers, the Fly of the Condor. I forget what the name of that is, but really good one. 3 Days of the Condor, and I was like, looking through the list, and Johnny Mnemonic, I be honest, I kind of settled on. So I was like, that's a good one, but I don't really remember it as one of the classics. But I rewatched it, and I was blown away at how great this movie is. Just such a good film.
Let me read a quick synopsis and we'll jump right into our notes. It says, in this film based on William Gibson's story, Johnny, played by Keanu Reeves, is a data courier who has a secret stash of information implanted into his mind. However, the data will kill Johnny if he cannot retrieve it within 24 hours. Accompanied by physically enhanced bodyguard Jane, played by Dina Meyer, Johnny sets out to acquire the passwords he needs to save himself. Worse yet, he is hunted by gangster Shinji and businessman Takahashi, both of whom seek the data Johnny possesses. Ooh. Yes, exactly. So, let's get into it. So, like you said, you kind of settled on this movie because some other good ones were picked, but why did you choose Johnny Mnemonic? What is your relationship with Johnny Mnemonic?
This was one of the films that I would rent at the movie store as a kid. Like, this came out in 1995. I was like 14. It's like, the blockbuster years still. And I remember just like watching this over and over again. I was really into computers at this time. This was me nerding out on both tech and film, and, also I think Keanu Reeves. I was into Keanu at the time. Who wasn't, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Bill and Ted, like my brother had got me into Bill and Ted, so it was just a natural progression.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm kind of the same way. I saw this in the theater for sure, and I know I rented it at Blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but after the rental period, I want to say like in 97 or 98, I never sat down and watched this movie from beginning to end. Of course, I would catch like 20 minutes here or there on HBO or TBS or something like that, but it's been about 25 years since I've sat down and watched it from beginning to end, and I forgot how bonkers this movie is.
Oh, yeah. My binge period wasn't that long. So, I mean, it's been 20 years as well for me. It was good.
Exactly. So right off at the top of this, the movie is introduced with a crawl, just like Star Wars, just like Blade Runner, and it sets the scene for this movie. And we find out in this crawl that this movie takes place in the future of 2021.
That's one of the first things I saw. I was like, oh boy, this is going to be horrific.
Man, I love it whenever you watch a movie and it's supposed to be the future, and it's like, that was a couple of years ago. Okay, whatever. Let's see what the 90s thought the future was going to be.
That's a 1987 Bell helicopter. What's that doing in the year 2300?
So in 2021, there is a new plague. It is called NAS, N-A-S. It stands for nerve attenuation syndrome. Mm-hmm. It is fatal. It is fatal. The cause and cure for it are unknown. In this future, corporations are opposed by the low techs. That is L-O-T-E-K-S, so you know they're cool.
Yeah.
The low techs are comprised of hackers, data pirates, guerrilla fighters, and they fight in the info wars.
This made me think of I don't know why, but Nuke from RoboCop 2. Yeah, the drug nuke that's like little the eye drops or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know. I heard NAS and I was like, that makes me think of
that. In this future, corporations use the Yakuza for muscle. They sheathe their data in black ice, which is just cool lingo for lethal viruses.
It's great.
Valuable data is entrusted to mnemonic couriers who smuggle data in wet-wired brain implants. And like I said, all this information is presented in an opening crawl that has the Superman credits raise just coming off the text. And so it kind of makes it hard to read in some places, like it just gets lost in the glare. But man, it sets the scene. And right after this crawl, we are introduced to the internet that only existed in movies in the mid-90s, where we get to watch data. In this case, it's a glowing orb of ones and zeros flying through a cityscape of the cyberspace and going by buildings and super information highways and all this kind of stuff. And this data that we're following is the wake-up call for Johnny Mnemonic in his hotel room. So this internet that exists in these 90s movies, I feel bummed out.
Oh, totally.
I mean, the whole time we're watching these movies like Hackers, like this movie, and many others, where is this internet? I never got to fly through cyberspace. Exactly. Right. Where buildings just made of code and cool, and then I have to physically go into some storefront representation to go into cyberspace. I wish it existed for at least a small period of time.
Yeah, as a denizen of the internet in the 90s, there was a lot of dialing, there's a lot of waiting, there was a lot of things not working. So yeah, it wasn't that cool at all in any way, shape, or form.
So the wake-up call happens, and we are introduced to Johnny, who is, of course, one of these mnemonic carriers. And he wakes up in this hotel room, and I just want to point out that this opening scene,
just terrible.
Just for me, just completely sets the tone of this movie in an unexpected way. So he wakes up in this hotel room. He's obviously had a super fun night. There's a beautiful woman getting dressed. There's champagne bottles everywhere.
There's like a food tray off to the side.
Yeah.
Destroyed.
So he had an amazing night. And the opening dialogue is this woman who's getting dressed turns to the bed and she goes, "Johnny?" And then Johnny turns to her and says, "Yeah." And then she just goes, "Never mind." Like, what?
Nonsense.
This is your yeah. This is your opening dialogue to introduce us to these characters, and just, "Johnny?" "Yeah." And never mind. Whatever.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she leaves to go get ice. He's like, "But we already," and it's like, "Oh, she's done. We're done. The transaction is completed here." Yeah. Also, her underwear on the food tray, like, gross. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but just put that in your purse. You don't need to put that back on.
Stick those on the floor. Hang them up.
Bit on the brie. Put it up.
I don't want that on my club sandwich.
He gets a video call from super handsome creep Udo Kier, and we find out that Johnny has a very important job coming up. Yeah, go ahead.
No, this is our first introduction to like the 2021 tech, and like I found it very hard to use. Like you're having to like point the remote at the numbers, or like how are you dialing?
So he has to listeners, he has to make a phone call, and he grabs it's a TV remote essentially, and he's just pointing it at the video monitor, and he has to go to each number and press in. And I was like, cool, this is the future.
No directory, no voice control. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So he calls Udo Kier. Udo, he finds out bad news that they cannot, the price for his operation to take out his wet wired brain implant and give him back, which we later find out he had to give up his childhood memories for this implant to work, that the price has gone up. So it's not going to work anymore. But guess what, Johnny? He's got one more big last job, big payday.
So typical. What is this? A common archetype? Is that what you call this? Like,
a common trope of just one last job.
One last job to get you out, Johnny, and it'll get you clean. It will wipe your record, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so he wants this implant out because he wants to, just be a person again. We can see he wants to make a connection to this woman, but she's never mind out. So
I'm done.
We find out his childhood memories are gone, so he can support the storage of this information that he, now uses as a data courier. And so Udo Kier tells him, "Hey, cool, this is where your job is. I'll tell the taxi cab where to take you." So he's going to meet these gentlemen in a hotel room for this job, this very important job. One thing I wanted to point out is that the cab that takes him to the hotel room, the cab is driving through the middle of a riot and protest, not like down the block or around the corner. It's in the middle. It's in the thick of everybody, and he just drops them off right in the middle of it. Like,
here we go.
Yeah, get out. This is a good spot.
We're about 400 people in. Seems like a logical place for you to be dropped off.
Yeah.
And then Keanu just like hops from car to car. Like this is normal. Like, riot's happening. Guess I just have to go hop from car to car to get to my destination. Like, who does that?
Exactly.
Keanu Reeves.
He gets in the elevator. He's about to do this job. And then one thing that Udo Kier kept asking Johnny was, did he get the upgrade? Did he get the upgrade? Because this is going to be a big job.
Right.
Well, in the elevator going up, Johnny pulls out this device, and it allows him to use the jack in the back of his head. And we find out Johnny right now has 80 gigs of storage that he can do, but this device allows him to double it and makes it 160 gigs of storage. Not sure what this device is. Pretty sure that's not how storage works unless it's like a cleanup defragmenter and, hey, I found some more space for you, but it's not going to be double. But it's uploading software to double his, I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a data compression. That's what I thought. It was like a data compression thing. But one thing I will point out for the super nerds who are listening, the estimate, I had to look this up. The estimated storage of the human brain is like 2.5 petabytes, which is, 2.5 million terabytes, or like 2.5 billion with a B gigabytes. So it's just this small fraction of what's available. I found, it's pretty interesting. Like maybe they didn't have that research at the time to know the full brain capacity.
That's crazy. Yeah. So you would think his childhood memories would be more than just 80 gigs.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
know.
So he gets up to this hotel room. There's a bunch of nervous people, and they have this super important information that they want to upload to Johnny's brain so he can take it to a destination in Newark, New Jersey, which is one of the last free cities on Earth, not run by a mega corporation.
Right.
Newark. Love it.
Newark.
Yeah.
Rando.
Exactly. But the person that he gets the job from, he asks him, I need to upload 320 gigs of information. Is that going to be okay? Do you have that much storage space? Obviously, we know he
does not.
He only has 160, but Keanu Reeves just says, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Let's do it.
We're good. Which I want to point out, 320 gigs at this point in 1995, that is a ton of hard drive space. Like, I remember that being an inordinate amount, like 320 gigs. Like, what would you do with that? Well, obviously,
exactly.
Store your brain,
So, one thing, let's talk about that for a second. So, this guy needs 320 gigs of storage space to upload this information to Johnny's brain. Later in the movie, we find out that this information is the cure for this plague, NAS.
Right.
And it's from the Pharmacom Corporation. They have the cure. They've had the cure for 8 months now. Mm-hmm. But of course, you don't get money from a cure. You get money from treatment. So they've been keeping the cure away from the public. And these people are smuggling that data with Johnny. And they're going to get it to the free people of Newark so they can just broadcast it all over the world. And this cure will be seen by everyone and hopefully utilized. And NAS will be a thing of the past. So it's the cure for NAS. It is 320 gigs worth of information.
What could that be?
What is this information? To put this in perspective, like what you did with looking up the human brain, I was like, well, that seems big. Right. So just to give you some perspective, if you wanted to download all of Wikipedia, the full English version of Wikipedia, just the articles, 45 gigs. 45 gigs for all of Wikipedia's English version articles. If you want to add media to that, so we're talking about the images, the graphs, all the other things, you're talking about adding on another whopping 99 gigs. Oh, so wow. If you want to download all of the English version, full version of Wikipedia, it's going to take you 150 gigs.
Maybe the cure for NAS has like a bunch of 4K video.
That's what I was going to say. Do they just have procedures that are going in real time, recorded in 4K uncompressed videos?
Gotta be.
So they either need to cherry pick the information that they want uploaded, or this future really needs to work on compression.
Yeah, that's
because
what I'm thinking.
This thing is double the size of all of Wikipedia. That's insane to me.
I do love that though. It's one of the examples of something that at the time you just had no concept of how much data that was. Because again, Wikipedia was not really even a thing, and maybe it was, but probably not in 95. And like that amount of data just was so incomprehensible. But now we look back at that and it's just like that just got it so wrong.
So he gets this information uploaded to his head. It hurts. I love that. I love anytime in these movies where information is uploaded or when somebody has to remember something that has been locked behind, just blocking out the memory, or it's actually behind some kind of mind firewall.
Right.
That anytime it's done, it's just, it's
painful.
You have
like a mini aneurysm with some blood seeping out.
One thing I did like is, so Johnny has no idea what this information is. He can't access it. I kind of like that idea of these couriers don't even know what they don't even know what they're carrying. But to unlock it, they need a code, and they don't settle for some kind of encryption or anything like that. He tells the person to grab 3 random frames from the TV. So 3 random images that this guy grabs will unlock his data. They are supposed to keep a hard copy for them, and they're supposed to fax.
That's the best part.
Fax a copy to their destination. So there's a hard copy with them, and the other side receives a fax.
And again, not to just keep mentioning this, but like faxing in 1995, still very much modern technology.
Yes. No, anytime, because faxes are brought up quite a bit in this movie.
Yes.
And it's like, dude, you have William Gibson who wrote this script, and I've read Neuromancer. Like,
exactly. It's a lot better than fax machines.
Exactly. Just make up a cooler term than fax. Like, send it over the data laser and, the whatever.
Ansible, the mind meld wet neural link.
Exactly.
Like, and not to take a hard detour here, but let's talk for a second about how William Gibson wasn't really pleased with how this movie came out.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about it.
Because this, and Andy, you probably know better than I do, but this was supposed to be an adaptation of a short story, low budget, kind of indie, kind of, black and white, probably. And what happened?
So, yes, Robert Longo and William Gibson got together in 1989. They both liked the story. They wanted to make something about it. They decided we could make a really cool art house film for $1.5 million. That's all we want, and we can make it cool. They don't really go into specifics in my research of what the art house film would consist of, but you can imagine probably, like you said, black and white. We'll talk about the black and white in a minute. Probably black and white, not a lot of dialogue, just mood and ambience, and probably sounds pretty cool. So they tried to get this funded. Nobody bit. No studio bit. And people in the industry and their friends told them, it's because you're asking for too little money. At $1.5 million, they're just like, no, that's nothing.
Not going to make a good
get
film.
Out of here. You can't do anything with that. So, but what happened was in 1995, of course, internet starts exploding. All these technology movies are starting to be made. I mean, Hackers would come out just like 3 months before this movie came out. And so the internet's exploding. And also, big thing, Speed came out in 1994 and was huge. So because of the internet, they funded this movie, gave them $26 million to make it.
Very quickly started making substitutions in cast, as I understand, like shoehorning people in. Like, we're replacing this really well-known actor with Dolph Lundgren, or
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Let's take a sidebar real quick, and let's talk about what this movie could have been.
Oh man!
So they get $26 million, and real quickly, whenever I've done research on movies and I read articles or listen to commentaries or whatever. Sometimes when you're listening to a director in an interview, you get the sense that, you're using the excuse of studio meddling to, make an excuse for why your movie wasn't well received. Sometimes I get that sense of like, no, bro, your movie just wasn't very good and nobody really cared for it. That's on you. Sorry, try again. Right. But after doing research on this movie, this was, for me, a prime example of, no, the studio just would not leave them alone and mess this movie up, because what this movie could have been, $26 million to start off with. Originally for Johnny Mnemonic, instead of Keanu Reeves, it was supposed to be Val Kilmer. He was cast. 1995 Val Kilmer, too, like right in the middle of his methody,
Oh yeah,
super intense acting period of just, you got the Ghosts in the Darkness and The Saint, where he's just really throwing himself into these roles. And it's like, hells yeah, man, I could see that. Val Kilmer had to drop out. The studio hooks them up with Keanu Reeves because of Speed.
Right.
Robert Longo said he was absolutely fine with that. But a benefit with Keanu Reeves is he came with tax breaks. Because this Canadian movie, it's Canadian. This movie was shot in Canada. Right. And because of these Canadian tax breaks, you have to have a certain amount of cast or crew to receive these tax breaks. This movie, they already lined up for the cinematographer, Michael Chapman, who has done everything like family-friendly films to super dark material. Just to give you an idea, this is the guy who is the cinematographer for Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, and Hardcore. So this guy knows grit. He knows darkness. Oh my God. Like, this would have been amazing to see his cinematography on this, because one of my complaints about this movie is that every single scene takes place at night. This whole movie is dark, yet it is too bright. Everything is too well lit. You see everything it doesn't have that seedy grit to it of this dystopian cyberpunk future. And it's really missing that.
It's not Blade Runner. It's not artful night. It's just like studio night. Yeah, exactly. It's a really good observation. I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, and speaking of Blade Runner, so Blade Runner came out in 1982. The budget for Blade Runner was $30 million. And look what they did with it. And so part of the problem is 13 years later in 1995, they only give this movie $26 million, and adjusted for inflation. That's if you adjust $30 million for Blade Runner to 1995 money, that's $47 million.
Yeah.
So they got half the budget, basically, of what Blade Runner got. And you can tell, and that's what sucks, because there's some scenes where you can tell they're trying so hard, where it's like, hey, they show a cityscape, and you can tell they're trying to mimic those big, huge LED virtual signage that Blade Runner has, and they have helicopters and other things hovering in the sky. But when you watch it, it just feels like, ooh, it doesn't quite come across, and you're just like, I can tell what you're doing, but oh man, if you only had a couple more $1 million to spend on models or effects or lighting.
Right.
And another thing that was funny is, because of Speed and putting Keanu Reeves in this movie, the studio changed everything. They wanted this movie, Robert Longo and Gibson wanted this movie to kind of be a darkly funny, weird movie where, just like a Gibson novel, you're just thrown into the middle of it and you don't really know what's going on. But if you're consistent with your world and you can just get through things through context clues, and then you eventually know what's happening. So they wanted this world to feel a little alien. But the studio's like, no, we want explosions. And they even literally had notes of, we need buses and explosions. No joke. They wanted a bus exploding in this movie. And I think that's the only reason we get later in the movie the place of heaven where Ice-T worked, the stronghold of heaven.
Worked.
where he works in heaven. Where you have those exploding cars coming down as a deterrent, as a self-defense thing for the compound.
Which I will say, it was really refreshing to see all the practical effects, because like you don't really get that in movies today. But like that's dangerous shit. Like that's stuff actually blowing up that they had probably permit for and stuff like that. So
I know.
I mean, it was kind of cool to see that.
And one of the last notes on this, what could have been, is so Dolph Lundgren was thrown at this production.
Oh, totally.
He was not cast, but the studios were like, no, this is an action movie now. We need an action person in it as well. Dolph Lundgren's going to be on your movie. And I'm like, what, man? Thanks. Okay, great. They had no idea what to do with Dolph Lundgren, so they decided on purpose, let's do something against type for Dolph Lundgren. So they created this preacher character. And honestly, like, Dolph Lundgren shows up to play in this movie. He plays this preacher character who we find out is just riddled with
cybernetic stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So he's essentially kind of a Terminator, but he doesn't,
T-1000 though.
But
no, T-800.
Yeah, the T-800 is the Arnold Terminator. But I will give it to Dolph Lundgren. He's definitely having fun with this role. But in this movie, Dolph Lundgren has a part that was filmed and cut from the movie where he gives this big, crazy, scenery-chewing speech about transhumanism, about, about technology and human and the flesh combining to be the next step of evolution. And I am the way, I am God, I am the new Jesus, I'm the cyber Jesus. And he delivered it all butt naked.
Oh, yes.
And they filmed it and they cut it because they were like, oh, well, obviously we can't have naked Dolph Lundgren just doing a crazy speech. And it's like, are you kidding me? Of course you can. Like, I want to see this Longo cut. Oh, so everything that could have been. And the last thing I'll say is that, and I know I'm skipping way ahead, the dolphin in this movie, Jones, in the original script, he was addicted to heroin. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So, I mean,
Navy crypto, addicted to heroin,
this movie could have been so much more, but hey, it is what it is.
Like a Gibson film, let's dive right back into this film where we're at. I think the upload. Jai Mnemonic's getting uploaded. He's got the mouth guard, which I'm like, what? Like, is he having a seizure? Like, is this, obviously causing distress for him to get uploaded to?
I know. So, and this is not new to him. I mean, he brings a mouth guard. So this is obviously,
he knows.
It's painful. It's going to happen.
He probably loves it a little bit at this point,
Yeah.
Johnny's in the bathroom. The accused is coming up in the elevator. And this is where we get our introduction to your favorite part of this movie. One of my favorite parts that I remember as a kid. The laser whip.
Oh my God. The laser whip is so cool. The minute it busted out, I was like, oh yeah, I remember the laser. That's like,
I love this.
The three things I remember from this movie. If you say Johnny Mnemonic, I'm going to go, oh yeah, Keanu Reeves, dolphin, laser whip.
Yep.
I honestly forgot Dolph Lundgren was in this movie.
I forgot Henry Rollins was in this movie. Oh, totally.
Right.
Laser whip.
I will never forget laser whip.
Also known as an electric Garrett. I might just throw out there.
Oh, nice. So this laser whip, whenever I was a kid, I was just like, oh, cool, laser whip. No, that's all I thought. But now that I'm looking at these movies with like a little bit more of a critical eye, I was like, well, it can't be a laser. It's like, so is it like a super heated filament?
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah.
And then also whenever he cuts people, it doesn't cauterize. It just slices right through. But then I didn't do any Google research because I know because of these movies I cover and the Google research I do, I know I'm already like on so many red flag lists. Sure. Yeah.
How to slice someone's head off with a super hot filament and not leave a mark.
And so, I wanted to Google, like, can something be so hot that it can cut through something, but it won't cauterize it? Like, is that even a thing? But I was like, I'll just leave it. Anyways.
We're not doing this.
Yeah. But super cool laser whip. And so cool that we get the, a little bit later, Johnny's with Udo Kier, and he's trying to get this information out, but Udo Kier does the betrayal, and he says like, oh, they're just going to take Johnny's head. It's done. You're over. We're going to take your head so we can take the information out.
He sends him to those two dudes to try to get his head cut off, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but laser whip dude slices Udo Kier. He goes thwap, thwap, thwap. Just a couple of quick slices. And I love it. He does the like brief pause, looks down like, oh no. And then thwap, thwap, thwap. Just perfect 3 lunch meat slices come off of him. It's so good.
Bad. So bad.
We are introduced to Ice-T as one of the leaders of the low techs. And Ice-T in this movie is, I mean, lack of a better term, super cool.
Oh,
He's got dreads. He's got snow goggles. on the
Looks
top
like
of
a
his
cyberpunk
forehead.
zombie.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Great.
perfect.
Yeah.
He even has like an Assassin's Creed forearm knife thrower thing that he can do at people. It's so cool. And we find out, to just up that cool factor, his name is J-Bone.
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 I run heaven. What? He's got his like toadstool guy there too that looks like one of the Lost Boys from Hook. It's like, oh, we've got some suits, 12 clicks out or something like that. Yeah.
Shut up, Rufio. And so I want to know, though, what we were talking about earlier with like Dolph Lundgren just thrown at them. I want to know, was Ice-T cast? Like, did he have to audition, or would they just like, nope, Ice-T's in this movie?
I think like this was Ice-T trying to get into movies I did not look this up, so I'm probably getting this wrong, but wasn't he in like New Jack City?
Oh yeah.
Wasn't that like a film that was around the time? So I think Ice-T was trying to get into film, so he was probably happy to be there.
Oh, for sure. Ice-T this same year in 1995 was in Tank Girl. And so in this movie, he's called J-Bone. In Tank Girl, he's called T-Saint. So
interesting.
He's rocking that
cross-pollination there from those two.
And in Tank Girl, he's essentially playing the same character as J-Bone, except in Tank Girl, he's a half human, half kangaroo hybrid.
Of course.
Exactly. You had mentioned it earlier, but I'm assuming he's the Yakuza leader, the Takashi Kitano, who plays Takahashi.
Great actor.
Very good actor. And again, it's been forever, and whenever he showed up, I was like, oh, hells yeah.
Yeah.
Not utilized that well in this movie. Actually, in the overseas cut of this movie, there's like, I think 12 more minutes of him.
Yeah. It was released in Japan, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So of course he's a known commodity there.
Right.
So there's like 12 more minutes of him. So we find out he lost his daughter a while back. Everybody's giving him shit about it. Like, oh, you're, too weak now because you're just, overcome with grief, whatever. I should be heading this operation.
This is where we meet the AI, who I thought at first when she came up was Linda Carter.
Oh, nice.
I thought it was Wonder Woman, and then I look into it, and this is actually like a very famous German actress that has done a ton of German film, and just was kind of a flash in the pan in the States.
Yeah, and when she shows up, because she shows up on a video monitor, and she's all like bathed in blue lighting,
looks like Cortana.
Exactly, and speaks ethereally, and you're just like, what? When she first came on, and she's kind of advising Takahashi, saying like, oh, blah, 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 you need to do this, and you need to do this. I thought, like, is he hallucinating? Like, what is going on? But then she shows up, and she shows herself to Johnny and everything, and we find out that she is, as Takahashi says, a ghost in the machine.
Yeah.
And there's a scene with Takahashi and this my woman. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as we'll discuss again very soon, this movie has some very, very deep and hip nods to technology at the time, like using the term ghost in the machine, or that concept was like very Neuromancer, very, very William Gibson. So you really started to see that his influence, or I started to feel his influence around that kind of pre-existing, person, Ghost on the Wire.
Nice. So this secretary, for lack of a better term, is talking to Takahashi, and she tells him that this ghost in the machine, that's this lady that keeps popping up, is actually Pharmacon's founder and former CEO. She died in 2015, so 6 years prior to this movie taking place, and that she was in. This is what the lady says. She was imprinted on the Pharmacon neural net installation in Zurich. Her neural net persona has Swiss citizenship under the AI laws of 2006. So some cool future things and talking about AI and everything, pretty neat. But all I could think about was, what a shit existence. Like, you are the former CEO, you die, and they're like, hey, we got some good news for you. You can basically be immortal. We'll just upload you to Pharmacon servers, so even in death, you can serve the company for all eternity.
You're like their eternal consultant. Yeah.
Yeah, because she says where she still advises the board to this day. And I was like, oh my God, like even in death, you existence. Have to work.
But again, I will say that is another very, very hip thing, like policy on AI governance. Like we're just now talking about that today on how to deal with that. And this was something that was proposed, 20 something years ago. That's 30 something years ago. My God.
I know.
That's wild. That's wild.
No, it's super wild. I mean, now there's all this talk of, does it need to be regulated? How are we going to regulate it? Who's going to be the governing body of that regulation? So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really nuts.
Okay. Can we talk about the best part of the movie now?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Where Johnny has to build the computer.
Yes.
So
we finally get a montage in this movie, and it does not disappoint.
This is what I remember from the movie. This is like when I thought Johnny Mnemonic, it was this. And I just love how they break in, they're just looking through all this stuff, and he knows exactly how to build this like super advanced, machine from just like spare parts as we see it.
Right. He's running around with Jane, that cybernetically enhanced bodyguard.
Who, by the way, goes on to play Dizzy in Starship Troopers and is like a total badass, I might add.
Absolutely.
So it's totally cool to see her. So
he tells her it's time to build a computer. And this is what he lists off. He says, I need a Synologic 16. I need SOGO 7 data gloves, a GPL stealth module, one Birdine intelligent translator, and Thompson iPhones.
Okay, so this is my favorite part, because so many people are like, oh yeah, it's the Apple iPhone 15 years before. No, it's even cooler than that. So again, this is like the deepest cut nod to technology at the time. The iPhone, spelled EYE phone, was an invention by Jaron Lanier, who was like the guy who basically invented virtual reality, still involved to this day. And it was the iPhone, and he sold the patent to that device to a company called Thomson Electronics. So such a cool, deep, like just kind of like a street cred, like the people who wrote the screenplay were obviously paying attention. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
He gets on the internet and he's got all this stuff in so in this, he has his head visor on. He's got these haptic gloves, these feedback gloves, and he's doing everything that we see in these 90s techno movies like Lawnmower Man, where they have to physically manipulate the data and fly through cyberspace by doing motions and movements. And all I could think about while I'm watching this is like when I said like, oh, how come we never got that internet of the 90s? But then after seeing Johnny navigate the internet of the 90s movies, like, oh my God, I'd be so tired. I'd send out 3 emails and be like, dude, my triceps are just, just tight from just having to hold my hands up and punch in, on a virtual keyboard and move things around. And it was, everything takes way too long.
Well, not to mention from a security standpoint, like all of your encryption is behind like, physical puzzles that are like,
right.
Rotational kids puzzles, basically.
So one thing he does in this scene, which I actually liked, is that he needs to find out who was supposed to receive this information so he can at least go to them to get this information out of his head.
Yeah.
And I like the bit of detective work where he gets into he finds the hotel where the deal went down, and he knows they sent a fax. So he's going to go...
the fax record. Yeah.
He pulls the fax record and then the job buffer pool and everything like that, and finds a name or a phone number. And I was like, oh, that's really cool detective work.
Yeah.
But to bypass the hotel security, it's not a password, not encryption, not something like that. It's a literal child's 3D pyramid puzzle.
Right.
I was like, oh, I just have to manipulate the blocks in a different way to make them fit. And it's like, how is
It's
my
very hodgepodge. Yeah.
Yeah, would solve this in a minute. So it's like, cool. That's good.
I don't believe that at all.
Yeah, exactly. So he finds out where this information's going. He has the name Dr. Allcome.
Which is cool. You know, that's also a very real thing. Like in old hospitals, they would have that, you know. It's pretty cool.
So yeah, he meets up with Henry Rollins, and Henry Rollins gives him Henry Rollins is playing this guy Spider, who does these implants and everything like that on these people in a low cost, basically healthcare setting. And he knows Dina Meyer's character, Jane. He helps her out with her black shakes because she has NAS in this movie. And he informs Johnny that Dr. Allcome is code. There is no Dr. Allcome. It's code for a hospital. Like, Dr. Allcome to whatever room because there's an emergency or something like that. It's basically
all
codes
on deck.
Exactly.
Now they use things like Dr. Blue or Dr. Pink.
Exactly.
Or, you know, when
they
depending
do
on what it is.
the pink alerts and all that kind of stuff. The Yakuza hire this preacher character to track down Johnny, get me his head.
Which his phone, his video phone is located in his Bible. I thought that was really cool. Like, he had like the Bible cut out, and like that was his communication device. I thought that's pretty cool.
No, absolutely. They did some cool character stuff with him. So dumb, but great. I love the video in his Bible. I also love his huge Rambo knife crucifix.
Crucifix knife, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, just so good.
Jesus time.
Yes, his catchphrase is Jesus time. Anytime he's ready to just kick ass, take names, he just looks somebody cold dead in the eyes and just goes, "It's Jesus time."
And I think what he's implying is it's time for you to meet Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah, because then he literally crucifies people. Like whenever he meets up with Spider, Henry Rollins.
Oh, okay, you're right. It's time for you to become
literal
Jesus.
nails.
Oh my God.
And puts them through his hands and pins him up and is like, oh, all right.
Oh, that's right. Because he did it to Spider with surgical devices. That's right.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
This is where Johnny, talking to Henry Rollins, that he has the cure for NAS in his head. So Henry Rollins obviously wants to get it out. He's talking to Johnny that this is more important than you, dude. So if I have
Don't
to
think
kill
of
you
yourself,
to get this...
think of the world.
Exactly. So if we have to kill you to get this data out, it'll be worth it, bro. And we also find out through a signature Henry Rollins, like, spoken word slam poetry rant, that the cause of NAS is electronics. It is technology. It's all the electromagnetic waves and everything and fields that surround us with our technology is causing this neural attenuation syndrome that causes people to have the black shakes and all these other symptoms. And he delivers it in his best Henry Rollins, I'm angry at the world, just ranting.
Very authentic, like still pissed off, like Rollins band era Henry Rollins. After Black Flag, but still like,
yeah,
I'm going to fight you if I see you. Henry Rollins, not Henry Rollins now. It was just like kind of this, soft, just older gentleman. No, and he's like, I'm going to kick your ass.
Whenever Henry Rollins is looking into Johnny's head, he, to look at his implant and everything, I want to point out Henry Rollins is on a computer, he's typing on a keyboard. He's got this eyepiece that he keeps looking through that I'm assuming it's looking at his implant, looking at information. I don't know. But right above his keyboard is a waveform monitor and a spectro,
like an oscilloscope.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I dealt with those all the time in the television studio, having to shade cameras.
Right.
So all I could think of is like, well, maybe he has to do work on people's eyeball implants and maybe they have to be shaded as well to get the color right. I don't know, but I just love it whenever it looks like technology. It's technology. It looks
Stick it
cool.
in there.
It's got random waves and everything. Like, okay, that doesn't
what you
need to be
want.
there, but sure.
Well, speaking of just like wrong technology, around this time, you see Johnny make a mobile phone call, a mobile video call, using some obviously like inferred, hacked together, setup. And one of the pieces he uses, and I've got one. It's an old like phone line butt set is what it's called.
Yeah.
It's what you would used to like clip into telephone systems, and he's just using this, in a mobile somehow device. I don't know how or why, but I thought, that's another example of just like, that's technology, stick it in there.
Exactly. And whenever he's making these secured phone calls and hacking into the telephone system so he can make these video calls, he's talking to this random dude.
Oh, this is the best part. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to actually have to remind me, who was this dude supposed to represent? Was he supposed to represent the buyer of the data in his head?
I don't know. I thought it was like the authorities, like he represented like a government,
right?
Because he was like, went to the authorities and was trying to turn himself in or something, and then got cold feet, and now he's calling him back saying,
Right.
"Hey, I actually do want to meet with you now."
So Johnny has spoken a few times to this guy on a video call, telling Johnny like what he should do next. And then it is revealed that it is an actual virtual puppet controlled by Takahashi. And when I say a actual virtual puppet, I mean an actual virtual puppet, because the reveal is that Takahashi has his hand like it's up a Muppet's butt.
Right.
And he's talking with his hand like a sock puppet, and the grid reader, the laser reader, is reading his movements and making the guy on the phone call talk, the avatar or whatever you want to call it. And even so much so that when he removes his hand from the reading area, the guy slumps down in his chair. Not like the call goes to black, he disappears. They actually coded into that program that, once you remove your hand from the reading area, the person will slump down like a dead husk. And it's like, what? Okay.
Completely ridiculous and unnecessary.
Super unnecessary. Like, why wouldn't you just have that technology on Takahashi himself so he can sit at his desk and just have a normal conversation, but it's changing his look to somebody else and changing his voice? But no, you gotta do it puppet style. Yeah.
Well, this is another example of them just getting something completely wrong, because we see virtual avatars all the time, and we may not even realize it, but like we see them all the time. And the ready state is just, still, just like a still face, and then when you give it input, then it moves, whatever. Yeah, I found the dead sock puppet type behavior to be kind of ridiculous.
Johnny's only hope now is heaven.
Spider's dead. He's been been Jesusized.
Exactly. It's Jesus time. He's going. So J-Bone is going to take him to the stronghold of heaven, where it's the Low-Tech's headquarters, which is in the underbelly of
a bridge.
Of a bridge.
Yeah.
Now, all the girders and everything of the underbelly of the bridge, they built it up as a floating stronghold. So he takes him because he feels that he can help Johnny get this information out. They all know it's the cure for NAS. The Low-Techs really want this cure. They're going to take Johnny to Jones. He has to see, I don't think they say Dr. Jones, but he's got to hold the doctor.
Yeah.
But he's going to take him to Dr. Jones to get the information out of his head. And when we get to heaven is, all I could think about when I saw this set was like, it just looks like the MTV Music Awards set from like around the same time, like
100%,
7 or something like that. It's just wires and ductwork everywhere, a huge open stage area, and then this just inverted pyramid of television sets that reach 30 feet into the air. And I was like, cool. So you're gonna give out the award for best rap music video next?
right. Where's Ricky Rackman and
Exactly.
you know what I thought when I saw this was the architect room in Matrix. It was very similar to like the giant TV display. But yeah,
absolutely.
Very interesting.
So J-Bone introduces Johnny to Jones, which, by the way, too many J's in this movie. We have J-Bone, Jones, Johnny, and Jane.
And Jane,
so,
that's right.
Good Lord. So we meet Jones, and Jones is a dolphin or a porpoise.
Which I did not remember at all. I was very much surprised when I was like, what are you serious?
Yeah. So Jones is this dolphin that's in a tank, and we find out that the Navy used this dolphin and put all these implants in it to, it's his original design, intentions were to hack into enemies' subs computers using infrasound technology. And
so, sorry, go ahead.
No, go, please.
So one other super deep nod to tech at the time. So this is 1995, and not everyone is aware that the Navy or the U.S. military is investing in offensive cyber technology to break. I mean, code breaking is a known thing, but like that association is not there. And I thought it was cool because, this is decades before the NSA is known to exist through, the whole Snowden leak and stuff like that. And I thought it was, again, just something that obviously someone who was clued into internet security, something at the time, they probably slid that in there like, yeah, he's a Navy code breaker, crypto encryption breaker to steal data, because that's what the Navy was doing at the time.
Oh, I know. All I could think about when they introduced Jones the first time I watched it was Day of the Dolphin with George C. Scott.
Absolutely.
Just, Mama, Papa. It was just like sweet, awesome.
And Jones has a temper. He doesn't like being called a fish. He will fry your ass if you call him a fish.
Okay, let's talk about that. Johnny Jones doesn't know who Johnny is and obviously insults him. And using his implants and his brain waves and everything, he can control some apparatuses that are hooked up to his tank. And one of the things that he does is these little radar DirecTV dishes turn towards Johnny and emit waves to the point where it locks up Johnny. Like he can't move. And I was like, wait, what is this technology?
It's like a tractor beam?
Exactly. And like, this would be really handy for the bad guys to have. Like if this exists, like, hey, we need that guy, just freeze him with these hold rays. But
well, it made me think of the deterrent device that they use. That's basically like a microwave oven that they point at people. Like that exists, but that's
exactly
just gonna, burn you.
Exactly. Why does I can smell my brain? It's cooking.
Oh, the dolphin doesn't like me.
So Jones is going to help Johnny get this stuff out. So what they have to do is they have to do a mind meld together.
Oh yeah, this is probably second for the most ridiculous technology thing in the movie. This is great. This is actually very reminiscent of Lawnmower Man at this time.
Absolutely. Johnny sits in a chair and they put this huge, ridiculously huge helmet visor contraption on his head, too many wires and nodes and everything, and it's hooked up to Jones too. Ice-T tells Johnny that, and I'm going to read my notes so I can make sure I get it right. He says the only way to get this information out is to hack your own brain and loop it through Jones.
Yeah,
that's all he says.
Yeah, that's true. It's the only way if you want to get that information. We know now in 2023, that's the only way to do it.
So they're doing this mind meld and everything's going pretty good for a bit, but then Heaven, the stronghold, is attacked by the Yakuza and everything's thrown out of whack. There's a huge generic fight scene, generic action, which is random explosions, this and that. One thing I want to point out, whenever I wrote a note that during this end where there's all these explosions, I wrote a note that just said, this action is whack. Like it's
terrible,
terrible action. And then in my research, they say, and I will believe them because of everything else they've done with this movie, Robert Longo did this on purpose. because he did not want this to be an action movie, and as an FU to the studio, purposely shot it like a B movie, just bad action movie from like the 70s or something like that, because he just didn't want to do it. And so he's like, hey, let's just all have fun and just have random explosions. So I thought that was funny. So they have to get back into Johnny's brain and do it again. They get hooked back up. And again, Ice-T tells him, you have to hack your own brain and loop it through Jones. We have no idea what that means. But luckily, they're going to show us what that means.
I mean, I know what it means, but I can't talk about it.
Yeah, true. So we are now in that 90s CGI world of cyberspace and everything like that. And Johnny is this digital avatar, cool CGI character with like a pencil eraser
like from Static X, maybe.
Yes, Static X mixed with Earthworm Jim. I was like, he looks like Earthworm Jim.
Maybe the Slim Jim guy.
Yeah, there you go. And so he's just in cyberspace or his own brain. Not really sure. He's got to find the information. The black ice, those deadly viruses that have been implanted they're after Johnny. But luckily Johnny doubled himself.
So using a real technique of like obfuscation or doubling yourself and, maybe making yourself look like your copy looks like a benign service. I mean, kind of a cool real technique you might use.
Nice. And so the virus kills the double and then stops.
Yeah.
Yes, it thinks its mission is complete. And so Johnny's now able to hack his own brain. And the whole time they're doing this, they're just literally trying to find the third image that will allow them to unlock Johnny's data.
That's right.
That's all they need.
Encryption.
Because they pieced together and they have the first two images. So they just need the third image. That's the whole point of this scene.
Which, by the way, Takahashi is his name, the owner of the pharmaceutical company.
Mm-hmm.
He has his redemption moment, and like at the end, somehow I remember that somehow he gives Johnny like the second image or something, doesn't he?
Yes.
Am I skipping too far ahead?
No, not at all. Yes. So Takahashi, during this big, huge fight in the stronghold of heaven,
huge, terrible fight, which looks
there you go. Thank
terrible.
Takahashi finds out what Johnny's doing. He's trying to unlock the cure for NAS. And then we find out that Takahashi's daughter actually died from the plague of NAS.
That's right.
And that Pharmacon itself was trying to hide this, and his daughter died, for nothing, because they had the cure when his daughter died. And so, yes, he gives the second image to Johnny. You feel like, oh, this is him. He realizes that he's working for the wrong people and he's going to help. But the other guy, Shinji, shoots him down cold-blooded in the back. He's gone. We don't get another scene with Takashi Kitano again. And then more bad action. Shinji's thrown off in a terrible green screen composite shot where he falls into the river. And so, like I said, Johnny has to hack his own brain. And what that means is his Static X Earthworm Jim character walks up to like a ball of information, and he literally hacks and slashes at this ball and physically pulls a piece of siding off of it, and it's the third image. And the third image is the blue lady. That's going to work. She's going to unlock it all, which if they're just using an image that wasn't the third image, it's just her helping. Why didn't she just unlock it in the first place? This AI. But anyways, so he does that, and then you hear the ghost voice of Ice Cube say, "You have to loop it through Jones." And the image like flies away, and it just unlocks everything. So not only do we not know what hack your own brain and loop it through Jones means, is that whenever they actually show it, we still don't know what it means.
I have no idea what that means. What assistance did Jones provide? Did he was he the one who allowed Keanu to break the code? Was he just the code breaker, but Johnny was the actual lead on the op? I don't get it.
I don't get it either. So they've unlocked all this information. They are ready to download, and the low techs are ready to broadcast this information across the world. And the way they do this is they hack into the TV stations again, which we've seen earlier in the movies that the low techs can do. They can take over some broadcasting channels. J-Bone tells it, go ahead.
I was going to say, which at the time, again, like great nod to kind of hacker culture. That's what people were doing. There was like a really famous
the Max Headroom.
The Max Headroom one where he took over the airwaves. Like again, it's kind of cool, seeing that, because that's how they were getting their information out, man.
I know, it's super cool. In this though, but instead of interrupting the signal from the station to the tower, they are hijacking satellite feeds,
right?
Because we get
the satellite or something.
Exactly, because we get unfortunately no budget shot of a satellite in space in orbit around Earth, and it could not look more janky.
Oh, it's horrible
if you tried. But it's one of those things where it's like, man, they have cool concepts. Give this movie a few more $1 million, please. And so they have the cure. J-Bone tells the world, hey man, we got the cure. We're going to be doing it, broadcasting it across the world. Get your VCRs ready.
Yes.
Because what better way to receive information and store it than a VCR in a world where there's already mini CD technology and fax machines. But
again, like what were you going to say to people? Like the concept of having an intermediary video recording device, like that wasn't there. Like what, 12, I sound so old saying this, but like what 12-year-olds have these days to do streaming, like that was like very, very high-end technology. So what did everyone have? The ability to record on your VCR.
I know, but I do love the idea of that's what they actually did. Yeah. Somebody's like, oh, I got to get a tape, and like, what is this? An old episode of Wings? I don't need that anymore. Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, maybe it's a callback to like the radio stations who would say the same thing. Like, all right, get your tape recorders ready. Here comes blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was like, get your VCR ready.
But I love the idea of that these low-tech scientists and these, these freedom fighters have the information now, but they have to access it off 320 gigs of information that this NAS cure is, and you're going to record it on a VCR.
You better get that long play, VHS tape.
Couple of tapes, and just like, cool, we have it. All right, get a team of scientists down here and just start transcribing the VCR tapes.
Just get a couple of old Bond films and just make sure to tape over the record tab just in case you need them.
And then at the end of the movie, I did really appreciate it got me.
Totally.
With the preacher character, who, by the way, he was part of the Stronghold fight at the end, and at the he gets his comeuppance by being electrically crucified, where he holds 2 live wires completing the circuit, and he's just fried, bursts into flames, and he's this charred husk of a corpse on the ground. But at the end of the movie, we hear this ominous music, and they show the charred remains, and it starts to move and get up, and then you realize they cut to a wide shot, and it's just the low techs picking up his body, and then Ice-T just says, it's just trash, throw it in the river. And so they throw out the preacher. But it got me. I thought, like, the preacher's a Terminator, he's coming back. Wah, wah.
So did you think that maybe that was kind of like an FU to the studio of like, throw that piece of trash out of here?
So I can confirm 100% it was an FU to the studio.
Oh, yes.
They, in their notes, wanted Dolph Lundgren to come back for round 2 of a fight. You think everything's good. But Robert Longo refused to do it. So he shot that scene exactly like that to be like, F you.
Yeah, no way. We're not doing it. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, the more I read about Robert Longo, this was his first feature film debut. He had only done music videos before and after this, really. Right. I mean, at least he has principles, and it's just like, hey, I'll do the best job that I can with what's given to me and with the studio constantly on my back, but I still have some things I just refuse to do. And so it's like, all right, thumbs up.
I would imagine that he was probably like a really big William Gibson fan and like found out that he was going to be working with him and was totally jazzed and was like, yeah, let's make this art film. And then he gets his shit wrecked by the studio that's like, no, we're going to turn this into, Die Hard, but, cyber basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could imagine that was probably a contentious experience all the way up to the end.
And that's the movie. It's the end. And we end with a pre-Fight Club shot of Jane and Johnny looking out over their dystopian city. And it's a new dawn. Yeah, exactly. Newark.
Or whatever it was.
Yes. Newark, Montreal, same thing.
It was enjoyable. I mean, again, it's one of those films that you look back on and you're like, wow, they really predicted, 50-50. Like, I think they got a ton of stuff right. I think they got a ton of stuff wrong, but the stuff they got wrong was just so comically bad that it was still entertaining to where it wasn't like, I don't know, arrogant or anything. It was a very enjoyable film for me. Like, even watching it again was like, okay, that was kind of cool. But I think you got to be the kind of person that enjoys watching old, potentially silly films.
After watching this movie and really after the research of hearing Robert Longo and William Gibson talk about this movie, it went up a couple of points in my books because they did the best they could with what they had, and they did not have a lot. Like I said, whenever you break it down, they had half the budget of Blade Runner, and Blade Runner didn't have a ginormous budget. So what do you expect them to do? But after all this, like, man, now's the time. Like, this movie's almost 30 years old. I would love for them to take another crack at it.
They did, and they released a black and white version in 2022.
Right. It's like
maybe a recut. I think it's more akin to the Japanese release. I don't think it's exactly the Japanese release, but I just to kind of follow up on what you're saying, I was so impressed by the movie and getting into it and like learning about it that I absolutely added the 2022 black and white collection or DVD or Blu-ray or whatever to my collection because I got to see this reimagining of it.
So you haven't watched it yet?
No.
Okay, well,
it's on the way.
Don't want to burst your bubble, but it is literally the same movie, but in black and white.
Damn.
I know, dude. So I watched it on the Criterion channel because the Criterion channel has the original Johnny Mnemonic.
I'm canceling it right now.
Johnny Mnemonic black and white. And I was like, oh my God. And after doing all this research, so I watched the original to take notes on this movie. And then afterwards where I was like, well, I'm going to watch the black and white version to see so I can have these notes and talk about what they changed. They literally changed nothing except they made it in black and white. There's cool stuff about it as far as like behind the scenes, like Robert Longo or William Gibson. I don't have it in front of me, but they had to learn how to color correct and do all this stuff because they didn't just like turn on a filter. They really caught the shot. They really color graded the shots to make the black and white look gorgeous. And it looks cool, but it's the same
film. Yeah.
It's the same music, same effects, same cut, same dialogue, same script. Everything's exactly the same. It's just in black and white. And I was like, dude.
Because you want the naked Dolph scene, you want like the allusions to Jones being on heroin. Like you want these things, which makes sense why he's so cranky,
Exactly.
Don't call me a fish. And also I need some heroin, please.
I need that sweet, sweet smack, man. Come on. Need a Buddhist skag right now.
That's right.
But no, I would love for them to tackle this movie again and really, put in all those elements. We're in the 21st century now. We are ready. This movie is now in the past, even when it takes place 2021. So in 2023, 2024, whenever you're listening to this, we are ready. I want the full-blown William Gibson, Robert Longo reimagining with heroin dolphins, naked Dolph Lundgren. Who would be the equivalent of like a methody Val Kilmer now?
Be Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
Which again, like let's not be greedy. Okay, we're just barely about to get part 2 of Dune, which has like been a really great reimagining for me.
I know. Same.
Maybe we can get Johnny Mnemonic 2.
Maybe.
Would you want a reimagining or would you want a sequel?
No, I'd want a reimagining, and honestly, I would love it if Keanu was Takahashi's character.
Oh, yes.
One, I think he would be good in that kind of, very stoic wooden performance.
Right.
But I think, plus I think it would be poetic to have now Keanu Reeves. He's the bad guy, but he still gets his redemption at the end.
But he still has his redemption arc. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dolph Lundgren, you can still cast Dolph Lundgren. In fact, I think he would look cooler now with all his age lines and everything, but the dude's still yoked. So.
He'd still whip your ass. He'd still take you to Jesus.
Exactly.
Well, next time I'm hanging out with my movie producer friends, I'll
bring it up.
I mentioned that. Hey, my buddy Andy, you really want to reimagine Johnny Mnemonic. What do you think? Sir, here's the money for the pizza. Please leave.
Yeah. Get out. Well, that's it for us. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. Wherever you're listening, please rate and subscribe us. It really helps. Also, leave a comment. Go to thwack.com and find this episode. Leave a comment. Is there something we missed? Is there something that deserves further discussion? Who would you cast as Johnny Mnemonic if it was redone today? Also, you can reach me at my email of moviesandmainframes@solarwinds.com. Let me know if you have anything to say. Garrett, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a lot of fun talking about Johnny Mnemonic.
Thank you. I had a blast. Flattered that you invited me. I'd love to be a part of anything that you do ever until the end of time.
Awesome. Thanks, man. No, I will definitely have you back on. This was a fun discussion. And thank you, listeners. We are going to log off. And until the next time, we will catch you later. Bye, everyone.
Movies
And
Mainframes.